Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he walked through the thick green forest. The air on this moon was heavy and warm, filled with strange smells and sounds he had never heard before. He had been exploring this place for 3 weeks now, taking samples and making notes about everything he found. The trees here were massive, their purple leaves creating a thick canopy above his head. Strange flowers glowed softly in the shadows, and small creatures with too many legs scurried away whenever he got close. His boots crunched on fallen leaves that looked like pieces of colored glass. Jake stopped when he heard voices ahead. Not human voices, but something else, something speaking in clicks and whistles that his translator was trying to understand. He moved carefully toward the sound, pushing aside hanging vines and stepping over twisted roots. What he found made him freeze in amazement. A village sat in a clearing ahead, but it was unlike anything humans had ever built. The houses were grown from living trees, their walls curved and smooth like giant shells. Bridges made of woven branches connected the buildings high above the ground, and walking between them were creatures Jake had only read about in reports. The Vithrak were small, maybe 4 feet tall, with scales that changed color as they moved. Their large golden eyes seemed to see everything, and their hands had long fingers that looked perfect for delicate work. They moved with grace, their tails helping them balance as they climbed and jumped between the tree houses. One of them spotted Jake and made a sharp whistling sound. Suddenly, dozens of golden eyes were staring at him from doorways and windows. Jake slowly raised his hands to show he meant no harm. An older Vithrak approached him. This one had darker scales with silver markings and walked with a carved staff. Jake's translator crackled to life as the creature spoke. "You are the Skywalker we heard about," the elder said in broken but understandable words. "I am Zask. We welcome you, but carefully." Jake smiled and introduced himself. Over the next few hours, he learned that the Vithrak were peaceful people who spent their time studying old ruins scattered across the moon. They were curious about Jake and his people, but also nervous. They had heard stories about other aliens who were not so friendly. Zask showed Jake around the village. The Vithrak had built their homes to blend with the forest, using living wood and plants to create beautiful spaces. They grew their own food in hanging gardens and collected rainwater in carved bowls. Everything was designed to work with nature, not against it. Jake set up his camp near the village. He shared human tools and knowledge with the Vithrak, showing them new ways to grow food and treat sickness. In return, they let him study their ancient sites and taught him about the forest. The Vithrak children were especially curious about Jake. 3 young ones named Pip. Nex and Kira would follow him around, asking endless questions through their parents who could speak better human words. They wanted to know about spaceships and other worlds, about human cities and machines. Jake found himself growing fond of the little creatures. Pip was the boldest, always trying to touch Jake's equipment. Nex was quiet but clever, watching everything Jake did and remembering it perfectly. Little Kira was the youngest, barely reaching Jake's knee, but she had the biggest smile and would giggle whenever Jake made funny faces. For 2 weeks, everything was peaceful. Jake made progress on his research, while the Vithrak learned about human ways. They were fascinated by stories of human adventures, though they seemed confused when Jake talked about dangerous situations. The Vithrak had lived safe lives for so long that they could not understand why anyone would seek out danger. Jake was teaching the 3 cubs a simple human game with colored stones when everything changed. They were sitting in a circle on the soft grass, the cubs chittering with excitement as they tried to remember the rules. The evening sun painted everything in golden light, and Jake felt more relaxed than he had in months. Then the howling started. It came from deep in the forest, a sound that made Jake's skin crawl and his heart beat faster. It was not like any wolf or dog he had ever heard. This was something bigger, hungrier, and much more dangerous. The sound echoed between the trees, seeming to come from everywhere at once. The 3 cubs immediately pressed against Jake, their scales turning pale with fear. Around the village, adult Vithrak froze where they stood. Their golden eyes went wide and their scales shifted to deep purple. Jake had learned that this color meant terror. Zask came running toward them, his staff tapping frantically on the ground. His scales were the darkest purple Jake had ever seen, and his voice shook when he spoke. "Death Singers," Zask whispered. "The Karathi pack comes. We must hide the young ones now." Jake had heard about the Karathi from the Vithrak stories. They were the apex predators of this moon. giant wolf-like creatures that hunted in organized packs. They were smart, strong, and completely ruthless. The Vithrek spoke of them in hushed tones like humans might talk about natural disasters. More howls answered the first, coming from different directions. Jake counted at least 8 distinct voices, maybe more. The pack was spread out surrounding the village. This was not a random hunt. This was planned. The adult Vithrek began gathering their children and rushing toward the strongest buildings. But Jake could see the fear in their movements. They were prey animals facing their natural predator, and every instinct told them to freeze and hide. Jake scooped up little Kira as she whimpered in fear. Pip and Nex grabbed onto his legs, their small claws digging through his pants. He could feel them shaking. The howls were getting closer. Through the trees, Jake caught glimpses of glowing amber eyes reflecting the dying sunlight. Large shapes moved between the shadows, circling the village like sharks around a sinking ship. Jake reached for his emergency beacon and activated it. The nearest human outpost would receive the signal, but they were 6 hours away. 6 hours was an eternity when death was howling outside your door. As darkness fell over the forest, Jake realized that help would not come in time. The Vithrek adults were paralyzed with instinctual fear, unable to think or plan when the death singers were near. The children were helpless. It would be up to him to find a way to keep them all alive until morning. The night air grew cold as Jake watched the amber eyes moving through the forest. He counted 12 distinct pairs, maybe more hiding deeper in the shadows. The Karathi were taking their time, studying the village and planning their attack. This was not the behavior of simple animals. These creatures were intelligent hunters. Jake gathered the 3 cubs closer to him as they huddled near the central fire. Pip, Nex, and little Kira pressed against his sides, their scales flickering between purple fear and pale terror. Around them, the adult Vithrek had retreated into their tree houses, but Jake could see their glowing eyes peering out through windows and doorways. Zask crept over to Jake, moving slowly to avoid attracting attention from the circling predators. The elder's scales were so dark they were almost black, and his hands shook as he gripped his carved staff. "They will wait until we sleep," Zask whispered. "Then they will come for the young ones first. It is their way. The cubs are easier to catch, and their cries will draw the adults out of hiding." Jake felt anger building in his chest. The idea of these creatures hunting children, any children, made his blood boil. He looked down at the 3 small faces looking up at him with complete trust, and something fierce awakened inside him. "How long do they usually wait?" Jake asked. "Until the deep night when fear makes us tired and careless. They are patient hunters. They know we cannot run forever." Jake nodded and began checking his equipment. His plasma cutter was fully charged, designed for cutting through thick vegetation, but it could serve as a weapon if needed. He had a few emergency flares, some basic tools, and his wits. Not much against a pack of apex predators, but it would have to be enough. The howling started again, closer this time. The Karathi were tightening their circle, cutting off every possible escape route. Jake could hear them moving through the undergrowth, their heavy paws making soft sounds on the forest floor. They were big, probably 8 feet tall when standing, with claws and teeth designed for killing. One of them stepped into the firelight. Jake's breath caught in his throat. The creature was massive, with silver-tipped fur and a muzzle full of scars. Its amber eyes glowed with intelligence and hunger as it studied the village. This was clearly the pack leader, the alpha who made the decisions for the others. The beast opened its mouth and spoke. Jake's translator struggled with the guttural language, but the meaning came through clearly enough. "Small tree dwellers," the creature said, its voice like grinding stone. "We smell the young ones. Give them to us and we will let the rest live. Fight us and we will take them all." Zask stepped forward on shaking legs, his scales now shifting between purple and a sickly yellow that Jake had never seen before. The elder tried to speak calmly, but his voice cracked with fear. "Great hunter, we offer you stored fruits and precious stones from the old places. We have metals that shine and crystals that sing. Take these gifts and leave our children in peace." The pack leader threw back its head and laughed, a sound that made every Vithrek in the village whimper in terror. Other Karathi emerged from the forest, forming a circle around the clearing. Jake counted 14 of them now, all with the same intelligent amber eyes and predatory grace. "We do not eat rocks and metal, little prey," the leader snarled. "We eat meat. Fresh meat. Young meat that runs and screams and makes the hunt worthwhile." More Karathi appeared, cutting off the last escape routes. They moved with military precision, each one taking a position that would prevent any Vithrak from fleeing into the forest. This was not just a hunt. This was a siege. Jake felt the cubs pressing closer to him as the predators closed in. Little Kira was making soft whimpering sounds while Pip and Nex tried to be brave, but could not stop their scales from showing their fear. Their small claws dug into Jake's jacket as they held on tight. The pack leader's eyes fixed on the three cubs, and Jake saw hunger and anticipation in that amber gaze. The creature took a step forward, then another. Its packmates began to advance as well, confident that their prey had nowhere to run. That was when something inside Jake snapped. He had spent his whole life exploring dangerous places and facing unknown threats. He had survived radiation storms, toxic atmospheres, and equipment failures that should have killed him. But this was different. This was not about his own survival. This was about protecting innocent lives. Jake stood up slowly, keeping the three cubs behind him. His hand moved to the plasma cutter on his belt, and he felt the familiar weight of the tool in his grip. The pack leader paused, confused by this strange behavior. In their experience, prey either ran or submitted. They did not stand and face apex predators. "You want them?" Jake said, his voice carrying across the clearing. The translator made his words understandable to the Karathi, and several of them tilted their heads in surprise. "You want these children?" The pack leader snarled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Move aside, strange creature. You are not prey we seek. We will let you live if you do not interfere." Jake felt the cubs clutching at his legs, their small bodies trembling with fear. He thought about his own childhood, about being protected by people who cared about him. He thought about what it meant to be human, to stand up for those who could not stand up for themselves. His voice dropped to a growl that surprised even him. "No," the word echoed across the clearing like a challenge. The Karathi pack froze, uncertain how to respond to this unprecedented situation. Prey did not say no to apex predators. Prey did not stand their ground when death came calling. But Jake was not prey. He was human, and humans had their own way of dealing with bullies. The pack leader's eyes narrowed as it studied this strange creature that dared to defy the natural order. It could smell fear on the Vithrak, but this human smelled different. This human smelled angry. "Last warning, Skywalker," the beast growled. "Move or we will move you." Jake activated his plasma cutter and the blue-white beam hummed to life in the darkness. The light reflected off his face, showing eyes that held no trace of submission or fear. Only determination. "Come and try." The pack leader studied Jake for a long moment, its amber eyes trying to understand what it was seeing. In all its years of hunting, it had never encountered prey that stood and challenged apex predators. The natural order was simple. Predators hunted, prey ran or died. This human was breaking rules that had existed since the beginning of time. Behind Jake, the three cubs pressed closer together. Little Kira had buried her face against his leg, while Pip and Nex watched with wide golden eyes. They did not understand what was happening, but they could feel the tension in the air like electricity before a storm. The pack leader made its decision. It would remove this obstacle quickly and get back to the real hunt. With a roar that shook leaves from the trees, the massive creature launched itself at Jake. The beast was fast, faster than anything that size should be. Its claws extended as it leaped, aiming to knock the human down and pin him to the ground. In its mind, this would be over in seconds. Jake moved. He stepped aside at the last possible moment, letting the creature's momentum carry it past him. As the pack leader flew by, Jake brought the plasma cutter up in a burning arc that caught the beast across its shoulder. The smell of burned fur and flesh filled the air, and the pack leader crashed to the ground with a howl of pain and surprise. Before the creature could recover, Jake followed up with a knee strike to its ribs that sent it rolling away from the cubs. The human's movements were smooth and calculated, like he had been fighting giant predators his whole life. The other Karathi froze in shock. Their leader, the strongest and most experienced hunter in the pack, had just been outmaneuvered by prey. It was impossible. It went against everything they knew about the world. Jake did not give them time to think. He grabbed a burning branch from the fire and hurled it at the nearest Karathi, striking the creature in the face. Sparks flew everywhere, and the beast stumbled backward with a yelp of surprise. Then Jake scooped up little Kira with his free arm while keeping the plasma cutter trained on the pack. His voice rose to a roar that echoed through the forest. carrying a primal fury that made even the apex predators step back. "Come on," Jake shouted. "You want to fight? I am right here. Come and take them." The pack leader struggled to its feet, purple blood oozing from the plasma burn on its shoulder. It stared at Jake with new respect and wariness. This creature fought like a Karathi with intelligence and aggression, but it moved like prey. It made no sense according to everything the pack leader knew about hunting. Around the clearing, the other Karathi began to circle again, but more carefully now. They had seen their leader injured by this strange being, and they were no longer certain this would be an easy hunt. Their amber eyes glowed with confusion and growing respect. From the tree houses, the adult Vithrak watched in amazement. Zas could hardly believe what he was seeing. The peaceful human who had been teaching their children games was now facing down an entire pack of death singers without showing any fear. His scales had changed from purple terror to golden awe. Jake kept moving, never staying in one place for more than a few seconds. He used the fire as a barrier, grabbing burning sticks and throwing them at any Karathi that got too close. When one of the beasts tried to circle around behind him, Jake spun and caught it across the snout with the plasma cutter, sending it yelping back into the darkness. The cubs stayed close to him, moving when he moved, stopping when he stopped. They could feel his protective anger like heat from the fire, and somehow that made them feel safer even surrounded by their worst nightmares. Two Karathi tried to coordinate an attack, coming at Jake from different directions at the same time. Jake saw them coming and made a split-second decision. He set Kira down behind him and told her to hold on to Pip and Nex. Then he charged at the nearest attacker. The Karathi was not expecting prey to attack first. Jake hit it low and hard, using his shoulder to knock the creature off balance. As it fell, he raked the plasma cutter across its hind leg, leaving another burning wound. The second attacker tried to take advantage of Jake's position, but the human rolled aside and came up swinging a heavy piece of firewood that caught the beast across the jaw. Both Karathi retreated, limping and confused. The pack was starting to realize that this was not going according to plan. Jake stood between the cubs and the pack, breathing hard but still ready to fight. His clothes were torn and he had scratches from claws that had come too close, but his eyes burned with determination. The plasma cutter hummed in his hand, ready to deliver more burning justice to anyone who threatened the children. The pack leader approached again, but more cautiously this time. It could smell the human sweat and see the small wounds on his arms, but it could also see something else. This creature was not fighting for food or territory. This creature was fighting for something much more powerful. "What are you?" the pack leader asked, its voice filled with genuine confusion. "You fight like Deathsinger, but protect like Lifegiver. Your kind makes no sense." Jake kept the plasma cutter pointed at the beast's chest. "I am human," he said simply. "And humans protect their family. These are not your spawn," the pack leader snarled. "They are not even your species. Why do you risk death for creatures that mean nothing to you?" Jake looked down at the three cubs huddled behind him. Pip was trying to be brave. Nex was watching everything with those intelligent golden eyes, and little Kira was peeking out from behind her friends. They were not human children, but they were children. That was enough. "They mean everything to me," Jake said, "and you are not getting them." The pack leader studied him for another long moment, then looked at its injured packmates. 3 of them were wounded and the night was only half over. This human showed no signs of tiring, and he was using tactics that the pack had never encountered before. For the first time in its life, the pack leader was unsure. Prey was not supposed to fight back like this. Prey was not supposed to win. But as dawn was still hours away and the hunt was far from over. The longest night of Jake's life had begun. The Karathi pack settled into a pattern of testing attacks, trying to find a weakness in his defense. They would feint forward, then retreat when he moved to counter them. They tried to circle around behind him only to find he had eyes in the back of his head. They waited for him to tire, but Jake seemed to have endless energy. What the pack did not understand was that humans were built for this kind of endurance. While the Karathi were designed for short explosive hunts, Jake could maintain peak alertness for hours. His ancestors had hunted mammoths across frozen plains and tracked prey for days without stopping. This was what evolution had made him for. Jake used every advantage he could think of. When the pack tried to coordinate a group attack, he disrupted their formation by targeting their leader with the plasma cutter. The pack leader now sported 3 burning wounds and was becoming more cautious with each attempt. When 2 Karathi tried to flank him from the left, Jake grabbed a handful of small stones and threw them with deadly accuracy. Humans had been throwing things for millions of years, and Jake's aim was perfect. The stones struck the creatures in their sensitive noses and eyes, sending them yelping back into the darkness. He used the fire as his ally, feeding it with branches and leaves to keep it burning bright. The flames created a barrier that the Karathi did not want to cross, and the light helped Jake see their movements in the shadows. When one beast tried to leap over the fire, Jake was ready with a burning branch that sent it tumbling back with singed fur. Behind him, the 3 cubs had stopped whimpering. They were watching their protector face down the legendary death singers and refused to give an inch. Pip had begun making soft, chittering sounds that Jake recognized as amazement. Nex was studying Jake's movements like he was memorizing them. Little Kira was holding onto his leg with tiny claws, but her scales had changed from purple fear to golden awe. The pack tried a new strategy. They began howling in unison, a sound designed to paralyze prey with terror. The noise was deafening, echoing through the forest like the voices of demons. In the tree houses, the adult Vithrak covered their ears and whimpered. Jake just smiled grimly and howled back. His human voice could not match the volume or the terrifying quality of the Karathi calls, but it carried something else. Defiance. Anger. The promise that he would never, ever give up. The pack fell silent, confused by this response. Prey was not supposed to answer their death songs. As the hours passed, Jake began to notice changes in the pack's behavior. They were becoming frustrated and uncertain. Several of them had wounds from his plasma cutter or bruises from his improvised weapons. More importantly, they were starting to question their pack leader's decisions. The pack leader was having doubts of its own. In all its years of hunting, it had never encountered anything like this human. The creature fought with intelligence and adaptability that reminded the leader of its own kind. But humans were supposed to be soft prey, easy to kill and good for eating. This one was neither soft nor easy. Jake could see the uncertainty in their amber eyes. He pressed his advantage, making aggressive moves toward any Karathi that came too close. When one of them tried to test his reflexes, Jake charged forward with a war cry that made the beast scramble backward in surprise. "That's right," Jake shouted. "You want some more? Come on." The pack was learning to respect the plasma cutter. The blue-white beam could cut through their thick fur and tough hide like it was paper. Several of them now kept their distance, nursing burns that would take weeks to heal. But Jake was not uninjured. He had claw marks on his arms and legs where the beasts had gotten too close. His shirt was torn and bloody, and his plasma cutter's charge was dropping steadily. He had maybe 2 hours of power left, and dawn was still far away. The cubs could sense his exhaustion even though he tried to hide it. They pressed closer to him, offering what comfort they could. Little Kira began making soft humming sounds that seemed to give Jake strength. Pip and Nex took turns watching different directions, becoming his extra sets of eyes. The pack leader tried one more coordinated assault. It sent 3 hunters to attack from the front, while 2 more tried to come around the sides. Jake saw them coming and made a desperate choice. He set the plasma cutter to overload and hurled it at the center group. The tool exploded in a burst of blue fire that sent the 3 attackers tumbling away with burns and temporary blindness. But now Jake was weaponless except for burning branches in his bare hands. The pack leader saw its chance and charged forward, jaws wide and claws extended. This time there would be no clever tricks or unexpected moves. This time the human would fall. Jake grabbed the largest burning branch he could find and met the creature head-on. They collided in a fury of teeth, claws, and fire. The pack leader's weight drove Jake to the ground, but the human managed to jam the burning end of the branch into the creature's mouth. The beast reared back with a roar of pain, giving Jake the chance to roll away. They faced each other across the fire, both breathing hard and both injured. The pack leader's muzzle was burned and bleeding. Jake's shoulder was torn open by claws and blood was running down his arm. But Jake was still standing between the pack and the cubs. And he was still not giving up. The first hint of dawn began to touch the eastern sky. The pack leader looked toward the growing light and felt uncertainty creep into its mind. Dawn meant the end of hunting time. Dawn meant the human had lasted the entire night. In the distance, a new sound reached their ears. The whine of aircraft engines growing steadily louder. Jake's rescue beacon had finally been answered. The sound of aircraft engines grew louder as 3 human transport ships appeared over the forest canopy. Their searchlights cut through the morning mist, and Jake could see armed soldiers rappelling down ropes toward the village clearing. Help had finally arrived. Lieutenant Commander Amy Foster hit the ground first, her weapon ready and her team spreading out behind her. She had expected to find a research camp under siege, with maybe one survivor hiding in the ruins. Instead, she found something that would be talked about in military academies for years to come. A single human stood in the center of a Karathi pack, bleeding from multiple wounds but still upright and defiant. 3 alien cubs huddled behind him, their golden eyes wide with exhaustion and awe. Around them, 14 of the galaxy's most feared apex predators maintained a respectful distance, their amber eyes fixed on the human who had held them off all night. Jake Morrison, I presume. Foster called out, her weapon trained on the nearest Karathi. That would be me, Jake replied, swaying slightly on his feet. Thanks for the ride. These folks and I were just having a discussion about personal boundaries. The pack leader stepped forward slowly, keeping its claws sheathed and its head slightly lowered. It moved with the careful respect that one apex predator shows to another. Through Jake's damaged translator, its words came through clearly. You fight like Deathsinger, but protect like Life-Giver, the creature said. We do not understand your kind, Skywalker. You are prey that becomes predator when young ones are threatened. This is not natural. Jake managed a tired smile as Foster's medic began treating his wounds. Stick around. You might learn something about humans. The pack leader studied him for another long moment, then looked at the 3 cubs who were still pressed against Jake's legs. Little Kira had wrapped her tiny arms around his ankle and was humming softly. Pip and Neck stood guard on either side, their scales showing protective colors that made them look like miniature versions of their human protector. We came for easy prey, the pack leader admitted. We found something else, something that fights for others without hope of victory. We do not have words for this in our language. Foster kept her weapon ready, but she was beginning to understand that this was not a typical rescue situation. The Karathi could have attacked her team the moment they landed, but instead, they seemed focused on the conversation with Jake. Zask emerged from his treehouse, his scales now showing golden respect instead of purple fear. Other adult Vithrak followed, their eyes fixed on the human who had saved their children. The elder approached slowly, his carved staff tapping softly on the ground. Guardian Singer, Zask said, using a title that made Jake raise his eyebrows. You have given our people something we thought was lost forever. You have shown us that courage can overcome any enemy. The pack leader heard this and made a sound that might have been laughter. Guardian Singer. Yes, that is a good name for this strange creature. One who guards the young and sings defiance to death itself. Jake looked around at the scene. Human soldiers ready to fight, alien predators showing respect, and 3 small cubs who had learned that sometimes the impossible was just another word for human. He felt pride swelling in his chest, not for himself but for what this moment represented. Commander Foster, Jake said, I think we need to establish some new protocols for first contact situations, and maybe set up a permanent research station here. Foster studied the Karathi pack, noting how they maintained their distance, but showed no signs of aggression toward the humans. You want to stay here? With them? Someone needs to keep an eye on the cubs, and I think the Karathi and I have reached an understanding. The pack leader nodded slowly. Understanding, yes. We know now that humans do not abandon their young, even young that are not their blood. This is wisdom we will remember. The creature turned to address its pack, speaking in their own guttural language. Jake's translator caught fragments. Respect, strange prey, new rules. Remember this night. One by one, the other Karathi approached Jake, each one briefly touching their muzzle to his hand in what he realized was a gesture of acknowledgement. Then they melted back into the forest, leaving only the pack leader. The massive creature looked at Jake one last time, its amber eyes holding something that might have been approval. We will watch from the deep forest, Guardian Singer. Your cubs will be safe while you are here. This is the promise of the pack to one who fights like us. With that, the pack leader turned and disappeared into the undergrowth, leaving only rustling leaves to mark its passage. Foster shook her head in amazement. In 20 years of military service, I have never seen anything like that. You just earned the respect of apex predators by protecting alien children. Jake grinned as the medic finished bandaging his wounds. That's what humans do, Commander. We protect our family. And these little ones? He looked down at the 3 cubs who were still clinging to him. Their family now, 6 months later, the first joint Vithrak Human Research Station was established on Kepler 442c. The facility was built in the forest clearing where Jake had made his stand, and the Vithrak insisted on including a memorial stone carved with the words Guardian Singer in both human and Vithrak script. Jake stayed on as the station's chief researcher and unofficial protector. The 3 cubs, now much larger and braver, served as his assistants and translators. They had learned human courage from watching their protector, and they passed that courage on to other young Vithrak. The Karathi kept their word. The research station was never attacked, though sometimes at night Jake would catch glimpses of amber eyes watching from the forest edge. The pack had become unofficial guardians of the place where prey had become predator in defense of the innocent. Word of the incident spread through both human and alien networks. Parents across a dozen species told their children stories of the human who faced down a death pack for strangers' cubs. The tale became legend, proof that some bonds transcend species and that courage is universal. But for Jake, sitting in his office while Pip, Nex, and Kira worked on their human language lessons, the only thing that mattered was the message Zask had sent to Earth. The Guardian Singer has taught our young ones to be brave.
He has given them something we could not. The knowledge that someone will always stand between them and the darkness. And in the deeper woods,
Karathi elders began teaching their own cubs a new lesson about the galaxy they inhabited. Some creatures that looked like prey were actually something much more dangerous. Predators who chose mercy until mercy was no longer an option.